Hey, dear listeners, 90 Day Fiancé, Journey, Jorge and Anfisa. We're going way back. Let's watch.
You want to talk about it?
So I took a break with Anfisa. She told me I was an idiot. Like the meanest bad words you could tell somebody. Degrading stuff. That I'm a moron, that I'm a piece of whatever.
I was wondering what would happen afterwards when they had the 3-person dinner where the sister was confronting Anfisa, and there was a lot of tension, and George didn't say anything. And if you're Anfisa, you could absolutely complain to your spouse. It's like, look, we sat down at dinner and your sister starts to go after me and you just sat there and said nothing. You could absolutely say, that hurts my feelings. You can maybe be even a little angry, a little frustrated, absolutely. Hurt, absolutely. But to call someone names repeatedly, and we know, as I haven't shown all the clips, but he has said a few times in interviews that her behavior that night was, according to him, I think, more severe than he's ever seen before, more angry, more abusive. He didn't use the word abusive, and we've certainly seen her be abusive towards him. So I was wondering, because if you are a perpetrator of abuse and you go through a moment like that where someone's attacking you and your victim doesn't say anything, then you absolutely will let them have it. You absolutely will punish them for not doing what they wanted you to do, and they will make you pay. They will absolutely. In fact, perpetrators often are operating on that sort of ledger to balance the scales, where they're like, your sister humiliated me and I felt horrible, so I'm going to make you feel 10 times worse because that's what's fair. And it's not like they're communicating to tell you, like, I need you to understand how I feel. And even if you like really say, yes, Anfisa, I know how you felt. I'm really sorry about now. Maybe she wouldn't have done what she did if he had done that. But I can talk about actual like abusive people with a pattern of abuse and a mindset of abuse, a personality of someone that can generate abuse. And so they will, in their head, they're like, until I see signs that they actually are. Because one of the things that can happen if you are a victim, if you actually are jaded about the abuse that you've been given, and you're just like, yeah, I've heard it all before, it doesn't really affect me, that will enrage them even more, because it's not that they just want to say certain things to you or throw things at you or even hit you in a certain way. They want you to feel pain. Not that they're sadistic. Some are, and we all do this to a much smaller degree, right? Well, I don't know if we all do this, but it's a common thing and a dysfunctional thing when, say, you're like, hey, spouse of mine, let's spend the night together. Let's have a date night. And they're like, oh, actually, I'm going to go out with my friends. And then they go out with their friends and you feel hurt. Now, some people will be dysfunctional about this and they will say, okay, the next time they want to hang out with me, I'm going to go out with my friends, right? Game playing. So everyone does this. And if you think about it a certain way, if you reduce it to its most fundamental level in this narrative, it's like, I felt hurt because they rejected me in this way, and so I want them to be hurt because in the same way. So they hurt me and I want them to be hurt in the same way. Now, we wouldn't call that abusive, we call it dysfunctional and unfair and a little immoral and not good, but very common. People do this frequently. Now, many couples don't do it. In fact, I'm trying to think if me and my wife, I'm sure at some point we've done it, but it's just not really our style. At least I hope not anyway. So I'm not saying that all couples do it, but it's pretty common. And so when, given this scenario I was talking about, an abusive partner, that's what they're operating from. They were humiliated in a situation. They think it is 100% your fault. And so in a much more exaggerated way, they want you to feel just as bad as they felt, if not maybe a little worse. And of course, people that have relational traumas, which is usually the case for abusive people. By the way, I was actually listening to one of my old reruns, one of my patron-only episodes on schema therapy, and one of the research findings that I heard myself say in the episode that I completely forgot, which is that according to schema therapy and empirical research, they find that abusive individuals tend to have a schema of defectiveness, meaning that deep down they believe that they're worthless. And so, I don't know, it just kind of pertains to what I'm talking about. So they feel a lot of pain, they feel worthless, they feel humiliated. And it might have been a little humiliating, but they blew it out of proportion. And then they want you to feel as proportionally humiliated as they felt, even though they only went through a mild humiliating moment. And then they proceed to make fun of you and call you names. And in their head, they're like waiting kind of, in a sense, it's not a conscious choice, but they're waiting kind of for you to feel and to show evidence that you feel humiliated, that you feel little, that you feel belittled. And when you feel that way, then they're like, okay, good, you better feel that way because that's what you deserve to feel like, and then they walk away. But anyway, we're hearing that he, at least according to his perspective, experienced a lot of verbal abuse because of that moment. And I was wondering, because I was like, if she's abusive, if Anfisa is abusive, she is going to let him have it after this. And it sounds like she did.
Like, you couldn't say anything.
I can't be myself around her. I don't know why I felt like I was afraid of her.
Bring me my red bag with my makeup.
Can I have a key? I think you're too immature to know this.
They're showing us these scenes. This is awful. Do the producers or editors not know an abusive relationship when they see it? Can they not just be like, this is probably not okay? Like, aren't there certain lines that they have? If the roles were reversed gender-wise, would they show it? I hope not. And they shouldn't be showing this. It gives me an opportunity to, I guess, point that out, but also to say this is what an abusive relationship looks like. Absolutely. I don't know. I guess it's upsetting. And, who knows about George? Maybe he's a deplorable human being. I don't know. But no one deserves this. I just don't believe that. And it's horrible. It's awful.
Why didn't you tell me?
I knew you would get mad.
It's so upsetting to watch. And it's upsetting also because there's a lot of people out there who will laugh at that scene like, ha ha ha, or he deserves it, or women can't be abusive, or laugh at her, I guess, like, oh, she's, ha ha ha, she's humiliating herself. And all I see is suffering and tremendous pain and a lifetime of that, probably in both people's lives. Like, that's all I see. And it's hard to watch. And I think it's, part of this is that when I'm watching this show, there's a line that this show will cross for me where I feel like I'm actually having to go to work, I like my work, but there's a mindset I have, and I don't have clients like this now, but I have in the past. So maybe it's triggering me and reminding me of, like, I would have a caseload of clients, 8 hours a day, 5 days a week. And I'd have like 7 clients that were this and worse in terms of abuse happening in the moment, sometimes even in my office. I mean, I would have couples screaming at each other sometimes, really awful things in my office in my early career. Well, actually, just along those lines, I had a reputation when I first started out as a therapist 25 years ago. I was working at an agency, and I was one of the only, I think I was like the only therapist that specialized in couples in the it was a small agency. In fact, it was a house that, well, anyway, point is that there were 2 locations for the agency, and my couples were so loud, oftentimes just like amped up, but sometimes they were being abusive to each other, verbally abusive. And they moved my office to this outbuilding because because my clients were so loud, which I found to be kind of a badge of pride in the beginning, because I'm like, yeah, I'm getting into it with people, but sometimes, yeah, it was not good. And I guess while I'm on the topic, people might be like, well, what are you supposed to do as a therapist? Well, it depends. There's a lot of different approaches. My approach, especially in the beginning of my career, tended to be very hands-off, of just like, well, it's do what you're going to do. I'm more hands-on now. I mean, I certainly have a fair amount of hands-offness in my work today. But back then I operated on kind of a purist point of view of just like, well, I'm not here to control people. And when they're done fighting, then they can turn to me and ask me what I think, or, they can involve me in the conversation. But because sometimes they would be kind of shutting me out as they started to fight. Anyway, that's a long conversation. But I will say the general principles are, number one is do no harm. So we don't want any harm to happen to anyone in the session. What do we mean by harm? But so if someone's being abusive to someone else, clearly, then yeah, absolutely put an end to that. It's not necessarily a requirement, but it's at the very least it's a moral requirement. You just can't watch, and it'd be too painful to watch someone being just berated in session, right? So you would put an end to that. And even if it was going both directions, you would just say, I don't know, let's stop that. The times that make me kind of, I could go on a long tangent about that, but the times that make me kind of reminisce and smile about my very volatile clients, I remember this one couple, never forget them. They weren't abusive to each other, but they were very animated in session, and they would talk over each other when they got animated. And I was trying to interrupt them, and I would usually, in some ways, I think they really trained me to be a much better therapist, because I had to really lean in to them, and learned that with a lot of couples, you have to exert a fair amount of control at all times until you get into kind of the cruising zone of therapy, where the clients, the couple can kind of manage in session without me having to be micromanaging. But often in the beginning you have to micromanage, otherwise they'll go off the rails immediately, and then no therapy is happening. In fact, they might even be taking steps backward. But anyway, I had this one couple, and I was doing and I was shy. I'm 27, 26 years old, and they're 45, and they're like my parents' age, and they're yelling at each other, and I'm just like, what do I do? Because I'm not really that kind of a person. I'm not someone that just like inserts themselves, and so I'm like, okay, well, and then over time I learned I had to, in order to be helpful, and usually I'd be able to interrupt them. And I remember thinking, no one ever taught me how to interrupt someone. That's not, what therapy book says this is how you get people to shut up? And I remember thinking, there's a lot about being a therapist that they just don't have in books or teach you. And so when I became a professor, I tried to actually talk about those things. They're like, you're not going to read about this in a book, but let me tell you about the reality, or the rubber meets the road. This is one of those things you got to know. There are a lot of things like that, actually, like just a tangent on that. There's a huge fundamental principle in therapy technique and practice, which is you never give advice. You'll hear this all the time in graduate school. Never give advice. Never give advice. And when I'd be working with clients, I'd find myself actually at times giving advice, but I was like, well, I'm not supposed to give advice, but I think this is actually a good idea. Well, without getting into the weeds, the rule is based on a good principle, which is you don't want to tell clients what to do. You don't want to be there saying, I think you should do this. I think you should actually quit your job and then get a divorce and then move to Hawaii, because I think that's best for you. Obviously, that kind of advice is misguided. How would a therapist know what to do? Plus, you're taking away the client's autonomy, or at least the opportunity for them to figure out what's best for them, which is, of course, what you want. You want them to have the skills, not you being their boss or something. So, yeah, don't do that. But they'll say, don't give advice. Okay, but what about when a client is saying something like, well, I just believe, I don't feel like I want a promotion, but I just feel like I shouldn't ask for a promotion because I feel like I'm not worth it. And I feel like I don't deserve it because I'm just not a very worthy human being. Okay, so part of an approach, there's many approaches to that, but part of an approach could be quote unquote advice giving, where you're saying to someone, no, I think you do deserve it. Now, you wouldn't say, I think you should ask for the promotion, but you would be kind of saying they deserve to, and they shouldn't think that way about themselves. And that's kind of advice, right? Like, I wouldn't say that to yourself. That's giving advice, right? So anyway, point is that there's certain maxims or fundamental principles in therapy. And one of them is like, never interrupt your clients, right? But it's like, sometimes it actually does, it does help. You don't have to, but it does help. And so I was trying to interrupt this one couple, and never forget this moment. And I would actually be able to do it. Sometimes I'd even just kind of tap their foot, because, their legs would be crossed. I'd be like, hey. Like, pay attention. And they'd be like, oh, okay. And they would be appreciative. This one time they're going at it. And we were in this room at this agency where there were a lot of poster boards from different activities that people were doing with clients and stuff. Maybe even like drug and alcohol program with the kids had some sort of poster board thing. Anyway, they're going at it. I'm just like trying to interrupt. And I grabbed and this is after, 10 minutes of them fighting. I grabbed one of those big poster boards and I put it between them, like stand up. And it's just, because it's like, if they can't see each other, then maybe they'll stop. And so I'm standing between them like, okay, let's try to do some therapy. And then they grab the side and they're like, and another thing. I mean, they were a lovely couple, and, they were just very fiery. And so I just always remember that. I don't know, why did I get on that topic? And by the way, while I'm fully off the rails, my wife got me this comb for my eyebrows, because she says that they're out of control. But what she doesn't realize is that I can go backwards with them like this and really make them bushy, which is, of course, where all of my power comes from, Now, a word from our sponsor, BetterHelp. Use the link below or use the promo code Kirk, because that really helps us out. You know how I always say take care of yourself at the end of every episode? Well, part of taking care of yourself is taking care of your mind, taking care of your needs. To get our needs met, we must first know our needs, and to know our needs, we got to explore our needs. And even if you feel pretty good about that kind of thing, there's nothing like having someone who cares about you provide you with the concentrated time to really explore what you need and how you feel. Well, that's where therapy comes in, of course. And as you often hear me saying, BetterHelp can be a really convenient option for getting therapy. Also, online therapy has been empirically demonstrated to be just as effective as in-person therapy. BetterHelp is customized online therapy that offers video, phone, and even live chat sessions with your therapist, so you don't have to see anyone on camera if you don't want to. It's much more affordable than in-person therapy, and you can be matched with a therapist in under 48 hours. Our listeners get 10% off their first month at betterhelp.com/Kirk. That's betterhelp.com/Kirk. Take care of yourself and get the therapy that you deserve.
Should have seen it, like, during the 90-day period. Like, there were so many times in that period that I felt like I could just send her home. I didn't want to be the bad guy.
There's that phrase, send her home, like you're sending back something that you purchased. Yeah, I want my money back. It's just that phrasing, right? Like, it'd be totally different if he said, sometimes I just want to not be with her. I want a divorce. I want to break up. Like, okay, that would be reasonable. But send her home? What is that about? And it just points to this mindset. And who knows about him, but I think he is a candidate, given the way he was talking about in the very beginning of this story arc, was that he... who knows about him, but a lot of people will believe that, one, I'm American and I'm from a special place and I have all the money and everything is great here. There's just this attitude among some people of like, things aren't going great for me in the United States, dating wise. And so I'm going to go to some, crappy country where everyone is desperate and will, they'll obviously want to be with me because I'm American and I have money and privilege. And so, I'm going to use that, think Big Ed, like when he's just grinding Rose down and just repeatedly hurting her for no reason. And then there was that final thing where he's like, oh yeah, I don't want to have kids or something. And she's like, wait, what? This whole time you said you want to have kids. I want more kids. I'm young. I want more kids. This is a deal breaker for me. And he's just like, well, I don't understand. Like, I'm too old. It's expensive. And she's like, Rose is like, okay, but that's not what you've been saying this entire time. You've been saying the whole time that you were going to have kids with me. And this is a huge deal. And Ed just thought like, well, okay, but so what's the, he wasn't saying this directly, but his communication was, so what's the alternative? You're going to break up with me and give up all this, give up America and a better life for you and your son? Is that really what you want? Like this sort of blackmail. And that attitude is, occasionally represented on the show. And when I hear someone say, well, she's being mean to me, and sometimes I just want to send her back, it kind of, I think, illuminates that kind of thinking, does it not? I don't know. What do you think?
I mean, we all try to tell you that. You were not going to listen to anybody because you had to go through it.
You're right. I sort of fell into a trap.
You know what you were chasing?
Yeah, I know. It's like any guy.
It
but
happens.
It just gets so caught up in some dumb now that I went through it.
I don't know what he's referring to. Is he saying I got caught up in being attracted to beauty or sex and wasn't thinking straight or something? Is that what he's saying?
But
happens.
it just gets so caught up in some dumb now that I went through it. I feel like this whole marriage is wrong in a sense.
So does that mean that you're not going to get back with her, or?
I don't know.
I don't think this is it.
So, jumping off point, if you're ever with a friend or a family member and you believe that they should leave their partner, you should all, in my view, well, I'll just speak from personal experience. If I were George, I would want someone who was truly on my side, but also not interested in me going either direction, was supportive either way. And it's really hard to provide that. Now, if you're a therapist, obviously, hopefully you know how to do this, not only externally, but also internally. You want to really get rid of this notion that somehow you know what is best for other people, because true, safe exploration happens when people feel like there's no pressure, even emotionally. But you can be a really great sister also by doing that. It's just like, hey, I'll support whatever you do. What do you want? How do you feel? Just give people the platform. And if you believe that they should leave, often if you give people the platform to and the place and the safety to actually explore, they'll come to that conclusion as well. But when you put pressure on people, then it doesn't feel good, and they won't want to talk with you because they know what they're going to get. So when people come to you, really try to reserve judgment. And sometimes as a friend, I will say something like, well, I'll tell you right now, if say I was her, I'll tell you, George, like, being your friend, I'm leaning towards you leaving her because I feel bad for you, and it doesn't seem like things are going that well. But what do I know? So I don't want to. That's just a gut reaction. But really, I want you to know that I'll support whatever you do. Believe me, and I'm just here to explore with you or to hear you or to support you. So, but I just feel like I have to get that off my chest, because if I'm coming across like I'm a little pressuring of you, I don't want that to come across that way, because what do I know? Something like that. It came out kind of weird, but so you can come clean with it a little bit, but but in the end, you want to say, look, I'm here for you. I'll support you. It's similar in a lot of aspects of life. If someone wants to quit a job, or if someone is struggling from substance abuse, that's another thing that I'll talk with people about. Is say someone is suffering from, or let's pick an easy thing like cigarettes. They're trying, well, not easy, but anyway, they're trying to quit cigarettes, or they're thinking about quitting cigarettes, and you don't smoke and you really want them to quit. Well, what can really throw a wrench into the gears of your relationship being helpful to them actually being able to quit is if you start to pressure them. Yeah, I really do think you should quit. I mean, smoking is bad. Whereas if you're just like, hey, I think smoking's bad, but I'm with you and I'll support whatever you do. You talk to anyone who has gone through recovery, when they have family and friends, they will gravitate towards those people who support them and love them regardless of what they do, even though they kind of know that their friends and family members want them to quit and be sober because they know that's healthy, but they don't want to feel that judgment. And because say in this moment he commits to her of just like, yeah, I'm going to leave her, and then he goes back to Anfisa and they make up, and he's like, oh, I'm back with Anfisa. Well, now I can't call my sister because she's going to shame me, or at the very least, I'll know, or I'll think that she will be shaming me silently. So it's really important. It's like a real common comedic example of this is your friend comes to you and is like, I'm divorcing him. It's over. It's over. And you're like, you know what? I never liked him. I've hated him from the beginning. In fact, we've all hated him from the beginning. And then your friend says, how come you didn't tell me? And you're like, well, I don't know. I didn't want to hurt your feelings, and I didn't know if you're going to stay with him. So I didn't say anything. Okay. Then she goes back, they get married, and they stay together for the rest of their lives. And every time you're hanging out with your friend, that's in the air, that you told her that you hate her husband, and everyone hates her husband. That cannot be taken back. Now, should you be honest? Yeah, I guess so. But it's just one of those things, like, don't put pressure on people is the point. Like, when people are in George's position, it's a very tough position to be in. You could have a lot of reasons to go, a lot of reasons to stay, and to feel like you can't talk with anyone without them having one sort of their own agenda being placed on it is, it can feel very lonely in that position. And frankly, that's why therapy exists to some extent, because so few family members and friends will truly just listen. And in fact, we saw it with Eve and Muhammad. Eve's friend, I can't remember her name, she actually did this. When Eve was talking with her friend was just like, she just expressed her own feelings, if you remember that, instead of pressuring Eve to do something.
I think, he will try to fix the relationship because he's always tried to fix everything. I'm going to believe that this relationship is over.
Okay, that's interesting. She says, I believe he's going to try to fix the relationship because he's always tried to fix everything. It makes me wonder if his past relationships were of a similar style. I don't know. Is that what we're hearing?
When he shows me that there is divorce papers, what is she going to do when money runs out?
I don't know what she's gonna do when the money runs out. She has to get a job. She has to do something.
Well,
like, I can't just give her money all the time because I need to get my life together.
All right, well, that is it for that episode. Everyone out there, please take care of yourself because you deserve it. You really, really do.